Welcome, race fans. This is episode number 9 of the Push to Pass podcast. I am Derik Vance, and like I said, this is episode number 9. In tonight's episode, we will be reviewing the Iowa doubleheader this past weekend, and then also we will be previewing the Gallagher Grand Prix at the IMS road course here at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Also, too. Joining us this evening, first we have a interview with an amazing journalist, an amazing human being all around, Jack Benyon from The Racer, and then from the Racer IndyCar podcast. He'll be joining us, and then later in the show, as always, we'll be joined by Mike from BetIndyCar to take a look at his winning bets this past weekend at Iowa, and then to preview this weekend's bets here at the infamous IMS road course at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. But before we get into anything, again, like I said, let's take a look. Let's recap, shall we, the race, the doubleheader this weekend in Iowa. First, let's go to race number 1. As you see the results up there on your screen, I'll go over them first here momentarily, but a little bit of a recap of the first of 2 Iowa races this past weekend at the Iowa Motor Speedway. First, it was the HyVeeDeals.com 250 that you are currently seeing up on your screen. When you think of the Iowa the Iowa Speedway, rather, one name comes to mind: Penske. And that was exactly who dominated race number 1 on Saturday. It was Penske driver Josef Newgarden extending Team Penske's dominant streak at the Iowa Speedway, winning the first race of a weekend doubleheader Saturday and collecting his 4th victory at the shortest track on the NTT IndyCar schedule. Newgarden raced to his series best 4th victory of the season and moved from 4th to 2nd in a tight IndyCar championship fight. The Indianapolis 500 winner and current points leader, Marcus Ericsson, who finished 8th and had his lead in the standings sliced to 15 points over Newgarden. Newgarden, before coming in to the Iowa doubleheader this past weekend, had been 44 points out of the championship lead, like I said, going into the race on the 0.894 mile oval. And he made up as much ground as he could with his win on Saturday. Some quotes, obviously, from Newgarden. Quote, "I'm glad I wore this cool shirt," Newgarden said, talking about the temperatures at the Iowa Speedway over this past weekend. "It was actually pretty nice and easy in there, to be honest with you. The car was good. I was surprised at how hard these guys were pushing on the restarts. This was a long game day." And then also, too, I was disappointed after qualifying. I just hate losing. And I felt like we had enough to get the job done, and we didn't. I was motivated. I knew we had the car here today to win this race in front of this great crowd. And as he said, it is one of his favorite tracks. Team Penske drivers had won 6 of the last 7 races at Iowa, which, if you weren't paying attention to one of the sponsors, the main sponsor, this past weekend, you want to talk about an excellent job that Hy-Vee, yes, the local grocery store chain Hy-Vee, as the title sponsor of the doubleheader entertainment extravaganza, also included not only a pair of races this past weekend, but great musical performances by the likes of Tim McGraw, Florida Georgia Line, Gwen Stefani, and Blake Shelton. Also, Pato O'Ward, who is currently sitting 6th in the NTT IndyCar Series points, finished 2nd in his number 5 Arrow McLaren SP Chevrolet, and was followed by pole sitter Will Power of the number 12 Verizon 5G Team Penske Chevrolet, and then rounding out the top 5 there was Rinus VeeKay of the number 21 BitNile car of Ed Carpenter Racing. Earlier Saturday, Power won the pole for both races to move him just one shy of Mario Andretti's record of 67 poles. Quote from Pato O'Ward before the race on Saturday: "I was pushing Joseph there at the end, and we didn't quite have it. We kept making the car better and better each stint. There at the end, I think we took a little bit too much out of it by getting Will and allowing Alex Palou and getting the lappers to try to catch the number 2. Also, Scott Dixon, who, if you remember last week, tied Mario Andretti for second on the all-time IndyCar wins list at 52. He finished 5th in the number 9 PCN Bank Chip Ganassi Racing Honda. Dixon was followed by 6 more Honda drivers, including teammate and a guy that just can't quite get his name out of the news, Alex Palou and Roman Grosjean of Andretti Auto Sports. The 7-time NASCAR champion Jimmy Johnson, yes, Jimmy Johnson, overcame an early spin to weave his way into his first lead of the series and of his career, and then consistently was running inside the top 5. During his run, he made several bold passes in the high lane, which a lot of drivers were not biting on, including a nail-biting 3-wide pass to pick off 2 other drivers. Johnson's longtime spotter radioed during that pass, quote, "Is this going to make the highlight reel?" And the Ganassi crew asked Johnson if he was enjoying the 250 laps around Iowa in 100-degree weather. And Johnson replied, "Yes, this is a blast." So let's get to some of the drive. Well, before we do that, we'll look at the rundown here, as you see up on your screen. On Saturday, it was Joseph Newgarden taking the win, followed by Pato O'Ward, Will Power, Rinus VeeKay, Scott Dixon, Alex Palou, Roman Grosjean, Marcus Ericsson, Graham Rahal, Christian Lundgaard. He was the highest rookie in 10th. Jimmy Johnson, Callum Ilott, Alexander Rossi, David Malukas, Kyle Kirkwood, Elio Castroneves, Devlin DeFrancesco, Jack Harvey, Connor Daly, Dalton Kellett, Takuma Sato, Scott McLaughlin, Simon Pagenaud, Colton Herta, and finishing out in 25th, Ed Carpenter. So let's go to some of the interviews that we have with some of these drivers after race number 1 in Iowa on Saturday.
Yeah, it was a long session. Car started pretty good, and then honestly we made a few changes that didn't really work as well. And we had a bit of a problem kind of mid-session on the engine side and some things that we had to try and figure out. But all in all, at the end it seemed okay. Instead, kind of caught traffic on our last run. I think it would have put us maybe 4th or 5th. So car feels okay. Feels good in the long runs. We'll see what tomorrow brings.
Yeah, it's been a lot of up and down today. Qualifying wasn't as strong as we wanted, but then we got some good restarts, made a bunch of overtakes, which was good. The car was quite good, not as good as probably the top 3, top 4, but we got ourselves up there with the crew that made amazing pit stops and some overtakes again. But it was a shame. I thought that was gonna be able to pass Power there, but I think he got a little bit more experience than me, and I was just burning my tires and just had no more tires at the end to finish 4th. So a shame that we lost those 2 places on the last 3 laps, but overall I think it was a good day for the number 10 Ridgeline car.
Alright, so race 1 here at Iowa. It was a very entertaining race to drive. The first 150 laps were amazing. We went from P12 to P2, attacking for the lead, and the car felt amazing, really, really good. Then, I don't know, it was, we went from one set of tires to another, and suddenly the balance was completely different. We had a lot of oversteer, so So that stint there in the middle, we just struggled a lot with the balance, and I couldn't really drive the way I wanted. So dropped a few positions, and then I had a bad moment lapping a car, and I got up in the gray and lost a few more positions. So that stint was really hurting us. So we had to sort of recover from P10 there in the end, and managed to pick a couple of spots, which is going to be important. Every point is important, but overall a bit disappointed, because I thought that at one point there we had the speed to fight for the win, and to come home 8th is obviously not what you want then. But new day tomorrow, and the car is fast, so looking forward to that.
Race one done. Race one done here. High Rock Vodka Machine. Really tough start to the race. First 100 laps were hell. The car that we had yesterday didn't show up today for some reason, and we didn't even change anything. So why? God only knows. But that's why we go racing, and we've got tonight to improve a little bit. I mean, still to get a top 9, P9 there feels good. But of course, we thought and we felt like we'd be a competitor for the podium today. And considering how difficult it was to finish 9th, actually, I'm not too unhappy with. I know it's a struggle for everybody, but we found ourselves at the very back of the pack and worked our way on merit all the way back up through. So we'll take it, focus on tomorrow, get the High Rock Vodka Machine further forward.
Super happy with that. Super happy with that. P12 in the end, obviously a very long and tiring race. It was good first half of the race. We kind of made our way up into the top 10. Then I had struggled a little bit in one of the stints to kind of get the tyre working. But yeah, that last stint we had good pace. Just trying to hold on at the end with those tyres. I think it was the same for everyone. But yeah, P12 from P22. So yeah, big thanks to the team. I didn't expect that. So the engineers working hard to get the car right for qualifying and then impounded into the race. We have a little bit to look at because there's still a bit more time we can find. But yeah, really happy with that for my first short oval race. So thank you, everyone.
All right, everybody, we just finished race one here. We just completed the 250 laps, and we ended up 14th at the end. We struggled with the car very much on the first and second stint. It was kind of on ice skates, and I was gripping onto the wheel so hard and just so focused that I didn't blink. My eyes were running of tears. There was snot coming out my nose. I didn't even drink any water. I was just so focused to make sure that I wasn't going to spin out on the car. And we managed to survive those stints, ended up going yellow. The last stint was the longest of 70 to 80 laps. I wasn't sure where the car was going to end up going, so I ended up just taking it very easy. And then the last 10 laps I pushed. We managed to go from 18th, 19th, all the way to 14th. So it was really fun at the end to actually make some passes instead of lose on passes. But yeah, overall, I think it was a lot of lessons learned there for going for tomorrow. So we'll see how we do that.
All right, so obviously it was a battle out there. The heat, tires, combination of everything. Just tell us a little bit about it.
The AutoNation Series XM and Arctic Wolf machine was actually pretty good in the beginning. We were able to make some great moves, but the tire degradation in our car was very difficult. This race, probably that I remember, was one of the toughest one I drove. I felt like I was a little bit on the SRX, sideways, kind of a lot of times. So little shout out to them because they helped me out. But very, very difficult conditions on the last stint. We lost about 5 spots, because I was just honestly hanging myself. I was just trying to bring it home. So it was a very tough conditions. Made some notes for tomorrow's race, and we're gonna continue it again.
All right, when you're ready.
Here in Iowa, we started a P9, a good qualification this morning in top 10, but immediately after the start I went to the back rows. I mean, it was virtually impossible to hang on. Had a massive understeer washout and then exited the corner, just cars riding all over the place, and it looked like we were going to have a long day. But then we had a little incident during the race, and a bit sorry for time on that one. It was completely my fault. But anyway, we damaged the car to come back to the pit, and we swapped the whole assembly of the front wing and the backup wing, and then it was a night and day. The car gets much better balance, much more downforce to fuel, and we are virtually one of the fastest cars on the entire last stint. So it's a very strange feeling. That's how it should be in the end, but we need to figure out what was wrong on the primary wing. But anyway, so happy to be back in Iowa, of course, particularly in the Droid car, and then tomorrow we're back onto our usual new tech and powerful car, and I'm looking forward to it, and especially I'm starting from the 5th tomorrow, so looking all very positive.
Again, huge thank you to all of the drivers that we were able to speak with at Iowa after race number 1. We'll take a look now at the final results, as you see up on your screen there for race number 2. And race number 2, if you weren't able to catch it on Sunday, was a lot like race number 1, but nobody could predict the ending that we had on Sunday. Pato O'Ward in his number 5 Arrow McLaren SP Chevrolet took full advantage of a late race misfortune by Saturday's winner Joseph Newgarden to capture his second win of the 2022 NTT IndyCar Series on Sunday in the Hy-Vee Salute to Farmers 300 presented by Google at the Iowa Speedway. O'Ward drove to a 4.2 second victory over Will Power in the number 12 Verizon Team Penske Chevrolet. Penske teammate Scott McLaughlin finished third in the number 3 Freightliner Team Penske Chevrolet, giving the Penske team 2 of the 3 top finishers. Quote from O'Ward: "We knew that we had a great car, so it was all about just capitalizing, being there when it counted. The guys did a great job calling when we had to pit. It was very, very enjoyable." Getting back to Newgarden, he dominated and led 148 of the 300 laps while trying to sweep the weekend. But unfortunately, something on the Team Penske number 2 Chevrolet broke with 64 laps remaining, and the back end spun out and he hit the outside wall. Newgarden was visibly rattled after his mandatory check in the infield care center. We'll give you an update on that here later in the show. Later, he fell after the race ended and was airlifted to Mercy One Des Moines Medical Center for further evaluation for a possible head injury. Getting back to O'Ward, he actually made the pass for the win on pit road with a speedy stop by his Arrow McLaren SP team and held off Penske teammates Will Power and Scott McLaughlin for the win. It's the second win of the season for the Mexican driver, who finished second on Saturday and remains firmly in the NTT IndyCar Series title race with just 5 races remaining. O'Ward's win was also halted Team Penske's dominance on the 0.894 mile oval, where Roger Penske's drivers had won 6 of the last 7 races prior to Sunday. 6-time NTT IndyCar Series champion Scott Dixon finished 4th in the number 9 PNC Bank Chip Ganassi Racing Honda, and was followed by teammate and 7-time NASCAR Cup Series champion Jimmy Johnson, who raced hard with Indianapolis 500 winner and current series points leader Marcus Ericsson to earn his best finish through 2 seasons of the IndyCar Racing Series in the number 48 American Legion Honda. Ericsson, who is also obviously a Ganassi driver, finished 6th in the number 8 Husky Chocolate chip Honda, and Newgarden's crash helped the Swede retain the lead in the NTT IndyCar Series standings, making Johnson's aggressive racing a bit more nerve-wracking for the Ganassi camp. Also, too, it was another podium finish for Chevrolet, who did it on Saturday with Newgarden, O'Ward, and Power as well. Another quote from O'Ward here: "Hopefully we can win a couple more. That would be fantastic. We had a good year, but we've dumped 2 races in the past couple months, so it's definitely been a frustrating but rewarding few weeks. This is the perfect momentum that we needed." Despite Newgarden scoring points on Saturday, and his crash on Sunday dropped him to third in the current standings, which we'll get to here momentarily. A couple quotes. Our quote here from Newgarden, quote, "It was a bit of a shock," Newgarden said. "Man, I just want to cry. I'm so sad for my team. I don't know what happened. It was a good run. I feel terrible for us. I don't know. Something went wrong there." After Newgarden's unexpected exit from the race, O'Ward took the lead for good. The victory was secured when O'Ward, Power, and the rest of the lead lap drivers entered pit road for the final pit stop on lap 239. O'Ward won the race off pit road and then definitely navigated through lap traffic over the closing 60 laps. Quote, "The number 5 Arrow McLaren SP guys in the pits were awesome," O'Ward said. "That's what gave us our win. Obviously, I did my job in the car to keep her safe and maintain. I knew we had the pace. It was just tough whenever you had to go through traffic. The guys in the front of me are handling it a different way than you do. It's just different every lap." Will Power, that is, led 80 laps, second only, obviously, to his teammates Joseph Newgarden's 148. Pato O'Ward led 66 laps, and the average miles per hour in the race was 140.681, which just had 2 caution periods for 25 laps. O'Ward will split a $10,000 winning check with his team and a charity of his choice, obviously for his victory as part of the People Ready Force for Good challenge. And this weekend, we'll preview here upcoming. A busy July continues for the NTT IndyCar Series with the Gallagher Grand Prix on Sunday, July 30th at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway road course. It's going to be the 4th race in just 3 weeks. And keep in mind, live coverage starts at noon Eastern time on NBC and the IndyCar Radio Network. So looking at the standings there from the second race on Sunday, it was Pato O'Ward, Will Power, Scott McLaughlin, Scott Dixon, Jimmy Johnson, Marcus Ericsson, Felix Rosenquist, the highest finishing rookie on Sunday, David Malukas, Roman Grosjean, Takuma Sato, Callum Ilott, Colton Herta, Alex Palou, Graham Rahal, Delvin DeFrancesca, Connor Daly, Ed Carpenter, Alexander Rossi, Rinus VK, Jack Harvey, Elio Castroneves, Dalton Kellett, Simon Pagenaud, Joseph Newgarden, Kyle Kirkwood, and rounding out the field in P26 was Christian Lundgaard. So let's get to some of the drivers and their comments on the race on Sunday, and then we'll come back and we will get into our interview with Jack Benyon from the race.
Decent day for points for sure, only 35 or so out, which is nice. Definitely some good racing there. Our car again on the long run was really good. We kind of needed those runs, especially at the end, to kind of go the full 80 or 90 laps, which would have really helped us, I think. But kudos to the team. 9 car, well, the PNC Bank car was fastest to get on pit road, which was big, and that definitely helped us. Bummer on the last restart, just bottoming too much. I couldn't fend off the 3 car, but all in all, good points weekend for us, and great running from Jimmy, actually the whole crew, which is great to see.
That's what we do. We're consistent. We're always in the top 10, and this year a bit better than top 10. Top 6s and top 7s and whatever. So close to top 5 today, but Jimmy was a bit too fast for me there at the end. I couldn't really hold him up. He drove really well. But overall, I think coming here, we knew this was probably our weakest track on the calendar, and it's doubleheader as well. So come away with a 6th and a 8th and still in the championship lead, I think that is very positive.
All right, we just finished race 2 there, and wow, I wasn't really a big fan of Iowa before today, but now I am a massive fan. What a joy of a race that was. Today's race, although 300 laps, it felt much shorter than yesterday's. I mean, just every lap was either a pass or setting up for a pass. It was, just chaos from start to finish, and we just kept working up. The only people that passed us were the McLarens and Penske's. Congratulations to them. They were on rails. I don't know what they've done with their cars, but other than that, nobody else could pass us. We were the ones going forward. Unfortunately, the pit stops was, a lot of chaos. We ended up losing a couple positions and would have to make up for it in the race. And then we had an amazing battle with my teammate Takuma at the end there. Neither of us made it easy, and in the end, I won that little battle. But it was a lot of fun, and he pushed me to the end. So thank you to Iowa, thank you to Hy-Vee for everything. What an amazing race this was. I will see you guys at Indy.
Iowa second race, we started second though, which was a lot better. And then at the first part of the race, we basically followed the leaders and basically left the pack behind it, which was good. So running on a top 5 all the time. And then we tried to, of course this is a 300 race, so we had to try to stretch the window. We knew undercut is a faster, and then the yellow basically to reset the position. So undercut is definitely working, but if you do that, you will be sacrificed on the last stint for the fuel. So that's why we stick on our plan. And then we were basically the last person to dive in pit, and then we're working onto the fuel for the last stint, and I was about to just we can make it. Where I think I'm confident that all the people have to come to the splash of fuel. So in the end, yellow came out and then didn't work in that way. At that point, because of the save the fuel, we lost a bunch of the position. And then when it happened for the sprint race of the final stint, I used them up with so much tires and to make it back. So it's a shame that we finished in top 10, but starting P4 to finish in top 10 is not great. But I guess we just head down and do the job, and hopefully Indy GP is a better one.
Guys, race two done here in Iowa. It was a tough day for us, for the number 10 Ridgeline car. Just a shame with the good day we had yesterday. We were missing a lot of pace. So yeah, we'll sit down and check what was it, where we were missing. But anyway, we tried our best today, and we'll regroup and get ready for Indy Pro Course.
Really sad weekend for us with really bad performance, and then we had some issues. Like today, we had a radio issue, so unfortunately we had to pit, and that just put us out of the race. We took the rest of the race as tuning for understanding how to get better on these kind of tracks, but certainly a bit of a shame in terms of points. However, everybody worked hard, everybody tried to figure out what's going on, and that's the spirit of the team. We keep pushing forward. We're going to come back. We're going to get better. We're going to understand, and it will pay off. So we'll keep the spirit up, and we'll go to Indianapolis, one of my favorite places. Really sad weekend for us with really bad performance, and then we had some issues. Like today, we had a radio issue, so unfortunately we had to pit, and that just put us out of the race. We took the rest of the race as tuning for understanding how to get better on these kind of tracks. But certainly a bit of a shame in terms of points. However, everybody worked hard. Everybody tried to figure out what's going on, and that's the spirit of the team. We keep pushing forward. We're going to come back. We're going to get better. We're going to understand, and it will pay off. So we'll keep the spirit up, and we'll go to Indianapolis, one of my favorite places.
Again, as I reiterated earlier, a huge thank you to all of the drivers that we were able to speak with after both Iowa races this weekend. Now it's time to get to our interview portion of the show. And like I mentioned at the top of the show, huge thank you first and foremost for Jack Benyon of the race to join us, to take a little bit of time out of his busy schedule this weekend here in Indianapolis to set aside some time to join us. So let's get to that interview, and then we will be back. And I have the absolute pleasure now to be joined here for the next few minutes or so, editor over at The Race, and then a podcast that he doesn't know this, but I frequently listen to over on Spotify, The Race, the IndyCar podcast as well. Host of that, Jack Benyon, is going to stop by here for a few minutes to join us. Jack, again, first and foremost, like I said, a huge thank you for taking some time out of your busy schedule, I'm sure, covering this season. But for everyone that doesn't know you, and it's a shame that they don't follow you on social media yet, can you tell everyone a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Well, the pleasure's all mine to start with. Thank you so much for having me on. It's always great to speak to like-minded people who love IndyCar. I'm a big fan of the championship, and yeah, it's really enjoyable to cover from a race-to-race basis. So really enjoying my time here in IndyCar. A little bit about myself. I'm obviously, as you can probably tell from my accent, from England in the UK. Got the chance to work with the race on covering IndyCar since the race started just at the beginning of the pandemic there. So since basically February or March 2020. So yeah, it's been great. I've loved every minute of it. I'm still learning every day, every minute, meeting new people and getting to hear some more of the stories behind the scenes. But yeah, fundamentally, just really enjoying my time covering the series here.
Yeah, I've seen you a few times, believe it or not. This is my second year covering this. So I've been a fan in the shadows a little bit, but been a fan of you and the absolute amazing work that you put in over at the race. But before we get into this silly season, and what a silly season that we've had, and an interesting turn in that silly season, and we'll get to that here momentarily. But what piqued your interest, Jack, to not only get into journalism, but the racing aspect of journalism?
Well, my family have been involved in motorsport for a long time. My grandfather was the foreman at a Ford garage in Chester, near to where I live in the UK, and that just happened to be where the Ford rally team used to service their cars. You know, at the Wales Rally GB or Rally RAC, or it's had many names over the years, but the British round of the World Rally Championship. So my family always been close to rally cars, and then I guess the American connection came when I was really young. Obviously, you know, young kids like to stay up past their bedtime, and for me, the excuse to do that was always to watch NASCAR. And with it being in the UK, obviously the time zone difference, you know, we'd have to stay up quite late in the UK to watch some of the night races. But my memories go back to, you know, races like Atlanta with Jeff Gordon kind of under the lights. You know, I kind of envisioned the rainbow paint scheme kind of flickering under the lights at places like Atlanta in the nighttime, and that's a really sort of you know, a memory that I can almost feel going back to. You know, like you're transported back into your past, into your childhood. So yeah, NASCAR opened the door to American racing for me, and then yeah, obviously the kind of the beautiful paint scheme of the Ganassi cars back then really caught my eye as well. And with people like Alex Zanardi and Juan Pablo Montoya competing, it was never too difficult to get excited about the championship at that time. And since then, really enjoyed going back and learning a lot more about that era of the championship that I kind of lived through, but wasn't really kind of there for as such a young fan. So yeah, that'd be the kind of the whistle stop tour. And then journalism wise, I always wanted to compete in motorsport. That was always, you know, what I wanted to do. But like many people, kind of found out that I didn't have the money to do that quite quickly, and looked for a different way. And so I love writing, I love reading as a kid. So, you know, getting into the journalism aspect of things was an obvious choice for me. And yeah, I've been blessed to work for some really amazing brands, and to work with some really amazing people who've really helped me come on and to work on my style and my writing and my ability to, you know, to cover a championship and get those stories that every journalist kind of wants to get. So yeah, that's the whistle stop tour, I guess.
You know, that's an interesting story, because being over here in the United States, when you think of NASCAR, and I don't want to paint the wrong picture here, but you know, people think of rednecks or hillbillies that follow NASCAR, and that's how you got your start. Obviously, as you said, sounds like growing up a huge Jeff Gordon fan. So, you know, when people think of NASCAR, you know, they think of rednecks and people of that nature. But interesting how that influenced you across the pond there.
Yeah, well, you know, I give Jeff a lot of credit, along with Dale Earnhardt, for opening those doors to a different crowd, a different, you know, crop of people. And, you know, I think, you know, NASCAR was doing all right for itself even at the time, but, you know, I think Dale Earnhardt doesn't really get the credit, you know, from a lot of people for what he did for the business side of NASCAR from behind the scenes. And, you know, I know from speaking to Jeff quite a few times now that, you know, Dale was a big influence on him in terms of how to present his brand and how to get his business together and how to manage that side of things. And that obviously ushered in a new era of NASCAR for the kind of commercial side. And Jeff was on, your cereal boxes, your Christmas decorations, basically anything you have around your house. Jeff was on it and available. So that was a great time for NASCAR, and to see him on, things like Letterman, being really thrown at the people. You couldn't move without seeing Jeff Gordon in that kind of late 90s period. And, a lot of that harks back to Dale behind the scenes kind of advising Jeff and teaching him about the aspects of the business and stuff like that. So really interesting transitionary period in that 90s decade for NASCAR, and one that I've really enjoyed going back and reading more about since. And obviously not lucky enough to meet Dale, but I can feel from when you speak to Jeff how much of an impact he had behind the scenes. Even though they had the kind of outward rivalry that everybody else saw, there was definitely a huge amount of respect in the background there.
Yeah, you bring up a great point talking about endorsements and things of that nature. I can remember growing up, and I'm probably a little slightly older than you. That when you think about NASCAR merchandise, it was you had a selected set of drivers, and the two you just mentioned there were the top two sales. It seemed like year in and year out with Dale Earnhardt and Jeff Gordon. And I think you're absolutely right that the late Dale Earnhardt doesn't get as much credit as he deserves for what he did for NASCAR, as you mentioned, not only on the track, obviously, but in the background, as you were talking about there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think even now, probably Dale and Jeff's merchandise are up there with the best selling. So that's no surprise. And that's just, that just reflects, on kind of what they've achieved and what they've built. And it's great to see Jeff now, I guess for a few years, maybe being a little bit outside of things or not being in the public eye quite as much, but now coming back into that with his new role. And, it's really nice to see him around, speaking again regularly and playing a big part in what Hendrick Motorsports is doing, looking at the future as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you mentioned, young NASCAR driver, and then you transitioned, it sounds like, to IndyCar, obviously following the Ganassi team there with the old Kmart paint scheme, I think is what you were referring to.
Target,
there.
Definitely Target.
That's right, Target. See, yeah. So you transitioned to IndyCar, and that's got to be a whole different world for you coming from NASCAR to IndyCar.
Well, yeah, I guess for any person coming from Europe, you'll hear the drivers that have come from Europe and more like international championships talk about this a lot. But the atmosphere is different, and the way things are done in American motorsports paddocks are a lot different to how they are in Europe. And as much as there's a cadence to it for a driver, there's a cadence to it for a journalist as well. And coming to this, this is my I guess my third season now, but still, learning, meeting people, figuring out how this paddock works and how to go about doing things. There's always an etiquette to journalism when you're dealing with the PR and different team personnel and stuff like that. So still, I'm still learning every day and absolutely loving that experience. It's really interesting to see how the paddocks work differently. And I guess there's, I don't like when people say that the American paddocks are more laid back, because I think that implies a level of not unprofessionalism, but just a level of, people maybe not caring as much. And that's definitely not the case. And I really dislike it when people, refer to it in that way. But there's definitely a, different atmosphere, just a different way of doing things. And the schedules are different. And the way the drivers are treated by the teams and the media is different. So it's really been a big learning experience, and, it's enjoyable. As it was to work in, around Europe and internationally. It's been just as enjoyable here in the States as well. And they're two very different sort of kettles of fish, but two very enjoyable working atmospheres to be in.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean when you talk about, learning your way around the paddock and the way things are done. As I mentioned, me being in my second year, so I definitely know exactly the things there that you touched on, talking about covering IndyCar, getting around the paddock, professionalism, and things of that nature. Well, that leads us up to this season, and what a crazy season, Jack, we have had so far. I know you had the opportunity last weekend to cover IndyCar in Iowa. They have been back there for 2 years. Before we talk about and recap both the doubleheader this weekend, I want to know, it seemed like the atmosphere and the excitement that Hy-Vee brought to the Iowa Speedway this weekend was immeasurable. Tell us a little bit about your experience there, what you've seen on the ground there, how the fans reacted to having IndyCar back in Iowa, and things of that nature.
Well, first of all, it's just incredible to cover a short track oval race in IndyCar. The speed of the cars is absolutely spectacular, and such a, you look at the oval and you think, there's no way they can do like such a rapid time over such a short lap. It's just absolutely incredible. And especially Iowa, because it's got these, it's bumpy, there's different lines. It's not like, some of the trouble that IndyCar has had at like Texas or Gateway in recent years, where the racing has not been maybe as, side by side as they've probably wanted. And you come to Iowa and, Jimmy Johnson's running 3 different lines, and, he's up almost hugging the wall at some times. And yeah, just a really cool experience, just fundamentally to start with, just to see cars go that quickly around such a short oval is absolutely spectacular. And yeah, as you mentioned, I think it was really well covered on the TV broadcast, so I won't recap too many of the obvious, but yeah, Hy-Vee obviously treating this as a branding PR exercise to increase the knowledge of their kind of Midwestern supermarket brand, and did a really great job of just doing, I spoke about this with on my own podcast about how Hy-Vee were coming to this for the first time, and it's very rare to see a company or a group that doesn't necessarily have so much motorsport experience just nail everything so well first time out, and that's definitely what they did. I know they have a lot of help from the likes of Rahal and Penske as well in putting this event together, but it was still spectacular to see what a great job they did first time around. They had all of the kind of volunteers at the event pretty much were Hy-Vee employees, which it's an employee owned company, so they've got an investment, but it was still great to see them taking time out of their busy schedules or their weekend where they're probably off work or doing different things for them to come to the track and help out. They were all really polite and really cool to talk to, and that was great. And obviously they had the Hy-Vee kind of porta cabin stores where you could go and buy just general stuff that you needed if you were camping over the weekend, which I'm sure at somewhere like Road America that would be even more popular than it was at Iowa. But it was great to see all these kind of schemes they were rolling out, all the money that they put into the speedway. Heard some eye-watering numbers as to how much money they've actually pumped into the place. And yeah, it's it's a feeling you get when you walk through the gates there that something cool's happening there, and it feels like there's some momentum building there and something really cool. So that was great to see.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And like I said, I didn't get the opportunity to go to Iowa, but just, listening on the radio broadcast, the TV call, and then on social media, you're absolutely right. Hy-Vee put a lot of time and effort into this. And not only was I glad to see this go off without a hitch, the unfortunate accident that Newgarden had on Sunday, which we'll talk about. But I was glad to see that, all of the IndyCar drivers that haven't been on this Iowa course absolutely loved it. And I was glad to see that this is going to be back, it sounds like, for the next couple of years.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And I think when you go back to Toronto as well, just to bring that into the equation, we saw 13 drivers going there for the first time, having not competed there before, because it was also 2 years since we'd raced there due to the effects of the pandemic. And we had, I think, 5 rookies in the top 12 in qualifying in Toronto, which was absolutely spectacular. And again, in Iowa, so great to see so many of the rookies taken to this track so quickly. I think that's a sign of how good this rookie crop is. I think we constantly talk year on year about how strong the IndyCar series is, and perhaps the kind of adverse effect that's maybe had on the likes of the rookie battle is that the rookies are generally so far down the championship order, just because the field is so stacked and it's such a high quality field. It's really unusual that a rookie's going to come in and be 10th in the championship halfway through the season. We're just probably not going to see that for a long time, just because of how strong the championship is and how detail oriented these teams are in extracting the maximum from these cars. So maybe Iowa and Toronto are a great chance for fans to look at that and see how well the rookies are doing. Maybe not so much, when you look down the championship and you see people who are 18th, 19th and 20th, maybe rather than looking at that, you can look at the impact they've had in places like Iowa and Toronto, where it's been so difficult for them to come for the first time. And I don't think anyone needs to be told how difficult places like Toronto and Iowa are from a challenge point of view for these drivers, and for the rookies to do so well first time out there. I think that's a really good way to look and evaluate them maybe in a more kind of focused environment as opposed to just looking at the points for the whole season.
Yeah, you bring up the rookie crop this year, this season, and that's been a huge topic with it seems like every episode how great those rookies get week after week. Especially you have the Callum Ilots, who he's a one car team, and what he has done, the success that he has had with just that one car is immeasurable. David Malukas is another one. I know he has another car with Takuma Sato, but the success Malukas has had this year, and then you can't leave out Christian Lundgaard as well. So you're absolutely right. This rookie class is quite impressive, and the rumblings, and you've heard these, I'm sure. There could be some rookies on the move next year to another car in their second year. Definitely going to be something I think to keep worth watching. But to recap Iowa, first we'll start with the race on Saturday, and a lot of teams had challenges at the Iowa Speedway, but there's one team in particular that just can come in here and just absolutely dominate, and that's Team Penske, as we've seen on Saturday with Joseph Newgarden and the dominance that he had. The only thing looked like I could have stopped him on Saturday was the heat. But other than that, there wasn't anybody else on that track that I think could touch the number 2 car on Saturday.
No, absolutely not. And I guess the proof of how far he and Pato O'Ward were ahead of the field was the kind of 20 seconds that they pulled in that final stint over the rest of the field, which, I saw some people kind of playing that down, that, that Joseph was lapping up to, say, like the top 10. People, playing that down because the track's so short. But for me, that was still just as impressive. Like, you've still got to lap all those cars. Like, it doesn't really matter to me the length of the track. I think it's still, super impressive what he was able to do. And I think it just shows, we know how much data these teams have these days and how much they can, look at their teammates and see exactly what they're doing over the course of a weekend, how they're driving the car. And even with that, Will Power's had years of that now. And even Scotty McLaughlin, we've seen how quickly he can adapt and how quickly he can, nail these tracks when he gets in a good groove. And even then, those guys couldn't match Joseph Newgarden. And to me, that just shows how, what a special talent he is at Iowa. We don't see drivers running away with races, quite as much as well. I don't think we see that anywhere else other than Iowa with Joseph Newgarden, to be quite honest with you. It's year on year, everyone knows he's going to be, right there at the front. And I think the key to that is he's very sensible when he's moving around in traffic. He doesn't commit to corners too early and is able to move around. He's never really, you never see him committed to one line. He's quite often moving around the track and finding the perfect amount of grip for him and his car setup at that time and where he is in the stint. And also, he's obviously very good on the tires. So, I just think it's incredible what he's able to do, even though his teammates know exactly what he's doing. They can see his data, and they could have gone and looked back overnight after the Saturday race and looked at what he was doing through the race, and then they're still not able to really do that themselves on the Sunday. Which when you're talking about people like Will Power and Scott McLaughlin, I don't think anyone needs to be told how good those guys are. And if they can't match Joseph at Iowa, I don't know who can. It's an absolutely incredible performance, and props to Penske as well for putting that program together. And I think it was clear from the tests, the 20 car test that they had at Iowa not long before the actual race itself, that Penske were quite a level ahead. And I think the other teams had kind of maybe they wouldn't admit that they'd surrendered at that point, but I think they knew that Penske were going to be very difficult to beat.
Yeah, Penske absolutely was. But not only was Penske hard to beat on Saturday, taking 2 of the top 5 spots, but Chevrolet as a whole. They sat the top 5. I don't know if there was, anything going around the paddock there after Saturday. The other Honda teams were looking around at each other going, do we have anything for Chevrolet? Because they absolutely dominated on Saturday, taking those top 5 positions.
Yeah, that is true. I think the lap itself is kind of like 50% on throttle. So when it's like that, I tend not to read too much into the manufacturer battle. I think it's obvious that Chevrolet have done a good job in Iowa, but I think as much as anything, Penske and Arrow McLaren SP have clearly done a great job with their car setup and how their cars are performing. So I think maybe they kind of slanted how that looked maybe a little bit on the Saturday. I think obviously Ganassi and Andretti, they're obviously the leading Honda teams, and they were both clearly struggling a little bit with car setup and stuff like that. So I think it's it's always interesting to look at the manufacturer engine battle, isn't it? But I'm not convinced that Chevrolet, like in some of the other races we've seen this season, I'm not entirely sure that Chevrolet turned up with, some sort of super package for this weekend. They've obviously done a great job, and props to them. But I think it might have been more the teams on that level.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, Jack, especially with teams when it comes to Team Penske, as we mentioned. Now, moving to Sunday, what absolute heartbreak, I think, for Joseph Newgarden going into the race. I think all of us had an idea as to, from that previous race, who was going to be good, who wasn't. We knew what to look for going into Sunday. And Joseph Newgarden, again, had the dominant car. But just something late in the race, it sounds like may have broken in the motor. I don't know if you can elaborate a little bit more on that. But who's there to pick up the pieces? None other than, as you mentioned, Pato O'Ward, who puts himself right back in the championship hunt after picking up this win at Iowa on Sunday.
Yeah, I think I saw Marshall Pruitt had done an interview with Tim Cindric, the president of Penske, and Tim had said that it was a right rear shock potentially that had broken, but they still weren't 100% clear on what had happened. So that was a big part of obviously the crash. And yeah, Pato, I mean, it's so difficult to look at the championship and see how many points Pato's lost through things that are out of his control. And there's a good chance he'd be, right up there with Marcus Ericsson in the championship if he hadn't have had those failures. So yeah, really kind of disappointing to see where the championship's at with Pato kind of, much further behind than he probably should be based on his pace and his own, individual, performance over the first half of the season. So that's a big disappointment, but it does set up the story that he's going to be, coming back over the second half of the season and trying to work his way back into contention properly. And, obviously had an amazing Iowa weekend. And, I think it's really important to point out that he incorrectly has this reputation of being a really aggressive driver who's hard on his equipment and stuff like that. Whereas I think last year, a lot of that was just how the car needed to be driven to go fast. The setups that our McLaren SP had there. And if you look at Iowa, the things you need to be, quick at Iowa, you need to be very patient in traffic. You need to be able to move around the racetrack and, be able to, not commit to a corner and kind of hand the corner over to the person that you're passing. You need to have some flexibility there to be able to move around. And also you need to be able to look after the tyres long into a stint. And you only have to look at the results from the weekend. Pato second and first. That tells you exactly what kind of driver he is. He's a driver who gets stuff done, and it doesn't matter whether he needs to be aggressive with the car or whether he needs to, be a bit more gentle with the car and look after it and kind of just stroke it home. He's a driver who can do all of that. So really impressive. And I'm happy for Pato that he gets to have races like that where he can show his real, ability, what he's really about, because I think he gets a bit of a bum rap sometimes from people who maybe don't necessarily understand exactly how he drives or what's going on when he's competing.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I am a huge Pato O'Ward fan, and I think Zach Brown and company have definitely hit a home run, getting him in his stable and then giving him the contract extension that he did this past May. I think somebody else that had a great weekend outside of Pato O'Ward, I think, had to be Jimmy Johnson, especially his finish on Sunday, putting that number 48 car in the top 5.
Yeah, I don't want to. I'm going to paraphrase a little bit, but my favorite Jimmy Johnson quote from the weekend was him saying that he was glad there was no braking zones, which is just fantastic, absolutely brilliant. I love that. Jimmy's not changed a bit since he's left NASCAR and come to IndyCar, and there's not a selfish or egotistical bone in that man's body. Like, he is one of the nicest guys to deal with. He's obviously the most famous and well sought after drivers in the IndyCar paddock, at least, and he still gives you just as much time as he would have done before, and as much as he possibly can. He's just a stand-up guy. He's anytime you get to spend with him, no matter how short it is absolutely brilliant, so enjoyable, and it's great to see a driver who is nice and fast at the same time. It doesn't have to be this stereotype of all fast racing drivers are horrible or have a certain level of ego about them. There's none of that in Jimmy. Obviously, he's very competitive and wants to win, but yeah, can't praise him enough for how he is to work with from the media side and just from a performance point of view. I think everyone's seen I think the media are quite obsessed with how he's got on since he's been in IndyCar and the results and things like that. But he's there and he's happy and he's enjoying himself. And who are we to put him down for that? He said a few times. He told me just before Toronto that he feels like he's doing his learning in an elite series, and that's how you've got to look at it. Like, he's done no proper single seater stuff before, and it's very, very difficult to come into a championship at the level of IndyCar and excel. And on the ovals, he's used some of his experience that he's had from NASCAR, some of his smarts from oval racing, and it's really served him well. And I think it's taken him a little bit of time still to learn about how the IndyCar handles specifically on an oval. It's not as simple as, oh, Jimmy Johnson's done ovals in NASCAR, that means he's going to be a rapid IndyCar racer straight away. He's still learning about the car and how it performs. But we saw in Iowa, he's not scared to move around. He's still got amazing car control. We saw that in qualifying at the Indy 500 as well. And we saw it a couple of times over the Iowa weekend. And there's people like Scott Dixon saying, maybe I need to move around the track a little bit more to kind of emulate what Jimmy's doing. And when people like Scott Dixon are sitting up and taking notice, then that's always a good sign. So yeah, great to see him just having a little bit of success and a little bit of noise to kind of quieten the doubters over his less than exciting road course and street course form. But I'm very positive about the whole thing. I'm happy to see him in IndyCar. I think he does a great job promoting the championship, and people should give him that leeway of the fact that he was never going to come in and be a champion, and he was top 10s or top 15s were always going to be the goal for him. And I don't think he's out of that conversation for the future in terms of if he keeps learning and keeps adapting to this IndyCar and keeps just getting better every week, then I don't think top 15s are out of the question. But on the ovals, definitely I could see him winning a race.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. He is obviously, learning on the fly, the learning curve. And I asked him that on Sunday, what his maturation has been from NASCAR to IndyCar. And you're absolutely right. Top 10s, top 15s, that's all you can ask for. And I think you're absolutely right. By the end of this, whenever he wants to call it a career in IndyCar, he's going to get at least one. And I think he's on the doorstep of doing that for sure. After the race on Sunday, there was a little bit of concern in the Team Penske camp, specifically Joseph Newgarden. Sounds like a concussion-like symptoms. Went to the hospital there in Iowa. Anything source-wise you can give us? I know he was released from the hospital, but I don't think it's been officially announced yet if he's going to be driving this Sunday. I know Santino Ferrucci is on standby just in case. Any more you can give update wise with that?
There's not a lot to update, just because Joseph will be reevaluated on Thursday morning. So it'll be Thursday morning by the time any of the IndyCar personnel have got to him and potentially cleared him or not cleared him. So that was always the plan anyway, regardless of after the crash on Sunday. It was always the plan that IndyCar would reevaluate him on Thursday anyway. And then obviously he fell in the paddock and had to go back to the infield care center. And that's when he was taken by helicopter to the nearby hospital. I know there was a lot of people worried about him being taken by a helicopter, but that was purely just because of concert traffic and how far away the hospital was from the track. So just a sensible move there to get into the hospital quickly. And yeah.
All right, we'll get back to the rest of our interview with Jack Benyon here shortly. But joining us now for the next few minutes, as he always does around this time, Mike from BetIndyCar. Mike, first and foremost, as always, we welcome you to the show. We thank you for taking a little bit of time out of your busy schedule, obviously, to join us. I know we only got a few minutes with you. First, let's hit on the winners that you had last week at the double weekend race in Iowa.
Yeah, man, what's going on, Derik? Thanks for having me, man. As always, cool to talk to you. Love talking IndyCar. Love talking IndyCar betting. Last week, Iowa was one of the best weekends I can remember for IndyCar betting. As far as all the content we put out, all the winners we hit, we went in wanting to bet Joseph and pretty much laid 4-1 on him in that first race, and that was the easiest bet I think I've ever made. And then, got a little bit lucky on the second race. I decided not to bet Joseph on the second race, just because, I tell you guys all the time, but, sometimes it's about the number. The number was just too small. He was 2 or 3-1. That's just too small for such a competitive series when it comes to, betting and betting IndyCar. So I didn't bet any winners at all because I did think he was still going to win, and it looked like he was going to win till I think we're probably still not sure if something broke on the back of the car or he put it too low or whatnot. But ended up just betting all the top threes and top fives, and I was able to nail the whole podium. Had Award top three, had Power top three, had McLaughlin top three. So it was a great week. If you paid attention early, when me and you spoke on our last podcast, we talked about that Chevy manufacturer bet. That hit twice, and that number moved considerably. You started off as plus money, went all the way to minus 235. So somebody listened to us because that number got bet down big time. And a couple of the group bets that we highlighted were also winners. So Iowa was a huge betting success. So a good weekend for me and hopefully everybody that followed along.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like it was, and it seems like, Mike, the last couple weeks you've been on quite a roll, I think, and I know obviously you're looking. Okay, let's keep that under wraps. But yeah, you're looking to continue the your winning ways this week at the IMS road course on Saturday. I know I talked with Jack, and you'll see this at the end. It's kind of, you got to kind of throw the book out from the May race because the conditions obviously from the May race to Saturday are going to be totally night and day. It looks like it's going to be about 80 degrees and sunny. And if you remember back to the race in May, depending on where you were sitting at, you were either sitting in sunshine or you're sitting in rain. So this might be another tough week for you.
Well, don't throw everything out. So throw the race out. I agree. As far as a handicapping perspective, don't care what happened in the race. The race was a total the rain tires, cold herda, driving an IndyCar like it was a drift car. Forget it. Don't worry about any of that. However, there was there is good information in the practice and the qualifying. And that's what basically I'm going to be basing most of my handicapping on and most of my bets. And I knew just like I remember back to that race, I had a very nice bet pre-qualifying on Mr. Will Power, and he grabbed the pole in that race, and I felt really great going into that race. And then the heavens opened up, whether you want to call it the gambling gods or another god, and they ruined my bet. And then like I said, all hell broke loose, and Colton was able to take the slicks in the wet track. So throw the race out. Keep an eye, but the qualifying and the practice numbers, I think, are valuable, especially the second practice when they're doing their qualifying runs, because the name of the game is, we want to get our bets in on the guys we think are going to qualify up top and then go from there.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be worth watching. I know practice and qualifying is tomorrow, so be on the lookout for what Mike has on Twitter after that. I did see that earlier today, rather, the betting numbers were put out. I know you've had a couple hours to go through them, digest them. Who are some of the standout drivers that you're looking at this week, and who are some of the sleepers, and who are you going to fade?
Yeah, so it's weird this week. I don't know. Hopefully the sports books aren't ignoring IndyCar because of all of the NASCAR and truck stuff going on. But there's only one book that's put out numbers, and it's Caesars. Awards the favorite, coming in at 3.5, 4-1. But I think the New Garden situation is the reason that sports books haven't put numbers out. It's still very weird. He's okay to practice, but not race just yet. So I think once he gets cleared after practice, I'm hoping the sports books will start releasing more numbers. But yeah, looking at the Caesars board and what Caesars released earlier, I'm going right back to Will. 7.5-1. That's plenty of value for me. If he hits the pole or qualifies top three, that number is going to drop to 2-1, 3-1 for him to win the race. So you can put me right down for Will Power at 7.5-1. That'll be my biggest bet going into qualifying tomorrow. if my sportsbook releases numbers. I don't have Caesars in my state, unfortunately. Though I am in another state. I need to look into that. But after that, I moved down the board a bunch. I think there's some really good numbers out there. I believe it's 25-1 for VK. That caught my eye immediately. Ray Hall was 50-1. I like that. Rosenquist was 25-1, and Grosjean was 18-1. All guys that have good history here, and those are pretty good numbers. So power, and then drop down to those 25-1 numbers for VK and Rosenquist.
We're kind of as always, Mike. We're in the same boat. One of my locks this week for fantasy is Will Power. Definitely putting a lock on him. And then sleepers. You talked about Pato Award. I have the whole McLaren team, if you want to say a whole 2-car team, in as a sleeper. And then also I slipped in Renus VK as a sleeper as well. And then we touched on the situation, the fluent situation with Joseph Newgarden. And I don't care this week. I don't think I'm fading him. I just don't. I don't know if I trust as you said, they're going to allow him to practice, but yet they're going to evaluate him after practice. Either he can go or he can't. I mean, there's no two ways around it.
Look, for me, from a betting perspective, I think he dropped at 5 or 6-1, about that range. That's too short. It's about the number. Now, if a sportsbook's going to tell me that they're going to give me Joseph at 10-1, 15-1 because he's hurt, like I'll bet the number. And based on what I know about the driver, regardless of what might be going on. So it's all about the number. It's all about what's available out there. I kind of saw it pains me. I've been talking about fading Palou, but he was 8.5-1. That's a pretty big number for him. That made me just kind of say a little bit, kind of think about that. We'll see. You said you've been to McLaren drivers, which ones? They're everywhere now. So that's interesting. But I'm with you. I think we don't have a ton of time to bet. This is kind of a weird race weekend where we have practice. I doubt the sportsbooks will take the numbers down after between practice and qualifying. Who knows? Especially since they haven't posted the numbers yet. So this might be a race where we're just probably hopefully getting some numbers early Saturday morning. And we're making our bets on Saturday after qualifying and see what those numbers are.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be worth obviously monitoring. And if people don't follow you on Twitter, that's shame on them because you've been raking in the dough as of late. And talking about Alex Palou, I'm fading him this week. I think there's just too much noise going around Alex Palou right now, but I am rooting for him to get one win from now to the end of the year, just because, Mike, I want to see that awkward victory handshake between him and Chip Ganassi.
Either that or he puts it in the wall to piss Chip off. I don't know, one of the two. It is interesting. It's great. Look, like I told you before, as far as I'm concerned, there's no such thing as bad publicity when it comes to this stuff. This is great for IndyCar. I want to grow the sport by pumping the gambling, the sports wagering, and that whole world. But this other stuff is great too, and I'd love to be able to, and you can bet on who's going to get Vettel's ride. Speaking of racing news today, so I'd love to be able to. Can you imagine me on the bet on silly season? I'd have to, I'd be in your ear and Tony's ear like crazy trying to find which bets I could make for you guys that have your ears to the ground on that stuff. But it's interesting stuff. It's about the matchup. It's about the number. Like, you want to give me a Power versus Palou matchup, then give me Power all day. You want to give me Palou versus somebody who I'm not so enthused with, maybe in the top of the board there, then maybe I bet Palou. I don't know. It depends. It all depends on the value and what we see and what we hear. So yeah, we'll see. Palou's probably still a fade. I'm still going to look to probably fade him, and it would take a really high number for me to jump on him. He has won here before, but yeah, for me, it's all I want to get back that Power bet that the rain got me on before. So. Power's the play, and then I do like those 25-1s on VK and Rosenquist. And look, if you want to go a long shot, the Rahal cars have been fast here. Graham has done very well moving up the field, maybe a top 5 if you see that offer, a top 3 on Rahal. Or some, this race does have a lot of rookies that sometimes show up in the top 5. You get some really big numbers on those guys. Maybe Caleb a lot, just coming off his contract extension, top 5, top 10 if you see it for him. It could be something out there that you can look to bet either. But hopefully we'll get some more of a betting card here going forward, and hopefully we get some. I'm assuming it's the New Garden news. We get some good definitive news on that. Sportsbooks will give us some numbers, then we can follow me on at IndyBet, follow at Burnout Bets and Burnout Sports, and we'll get you all the information. We did a Twitter Spaces today. It's out there. You can listen to. It was a brief one because there wasn't many lines, but you can also. We'll probably jump on Saturday morning as well and talk about the race and what bets are out there.
Yeah, you kind of beat me to that. I was curious to ask if those final numbers do go out, if and when we do get the Joseph Newgarden update after after qualifying or after practice. Do you or Tony have another Spaces planned? I know, like you said, this is kind of a wonky start on Saturday, being at around 12:30. So can people expect another Spaces between now and the start of the race?
For sure, yeah. As long as there's numbers and cars to bet on, we'll do the Spaces and we'll talk about what we're betting on, what we think we like, and what we see, and we'll have a lot more information at that point. Information is what's key in betting, and we'll see if we can keep this hot streak alive.
Don't tell nobody about that. But Mike, again, a huge thank you for joining us. Your work that you put in is impeccable, and good luck to your bets this week. Hopefully you can continue to stay on that money train that you continue, you and Tony and everybody driving. And we'll talk next week, Nashville.
Awesome, man. Take care.
Yep, thank you. That was Mike of IndyCar, or BetIndyCar. Go check him out if you want to win some cash, some scratch, as Dan Dockich likes to say. Go check him out over on Twitter. All right, let's get back to our interview with Jack Benyon. We'll come back after that. Preview the Gallagher Grand Prix here at the IMS road course, and then we will get on out of here.
Obviously, as you mentioned, he was released, and very difficult one. I mean, I don't want to speculate about his condition or what happened. I think for context, the only thing I'd say is obviously that Iowa weekend is one of the most demanding on the schedule. There was multiple drivers having IV drips after the Saturday race to get hydrated again, ready for the Sunday race, and it was so hot. It was really, really hot, especially in the cars. Obviously, the drivers in overalls, and with the aero screen, there's not a lot of air circulating inside the car at all. And the other thing I would mention is that Joseph just feels like he's under a lot of pressure right now to deliver results for that team, because they've clearly hit incredible peaks, winning 4 races this season. Pretty much any other year over the past 4 wins would have won in the championship, but because he's been so inconsistent outside of those 4 race wins, he was just about to take the lead of the championship had he stayed ahead and won that Iowa race. And we know how much pressure he puts on himself to carry that team forward, and he's searching for that 3rd championship that he probably should have won before, and as for whatever reason has not. There's been some complicated seasons where arguably he's been the best driver in the series, or at least performing to that level, and not won the championship. So yeah, I think there's a level of pressure that he puts on himself, and you saw that, I think, in his post-race press conference when he was released from the infield care center, talking about how this never happens at Penske, and how they can't afford for it to happen. So definitely a high pressure situation in the heat of Iowa, with dehydration and all that sort of stuff going on. So a really complicated weekend for all the drivers, not just Joseph. So we'll keep a close eye on what goes on now. There'll be some tests. The drivers do some tests in the off season that give the IndyCar medical team a baseline, so they'll be able to retest him on Thursday and test his results against what he's given before. And they might I don't know if they're going to get him in the sim, but that's normally a test that they'll do as well. They'll try and get if there's time, they'll try and get the driver and their engineer in a sim and kind of evaluate how they're working together. And the engineer can give feedback as to if the driver's kind of performing normally and giving good feedback and stuff like that. That might be something they look to do on Thursday morning as well. I'm not sure if that's going to be part of the kind of assessment process, but yeah, we'll wait with bated breath and hope that Joseph is first and foremost healthy and fit and willing and able to race at the weekend, because he's part of this really interesting championship battle. And anyone who wins 4 races deserves to be in the chance to win the championship at the end of the season. So we hope that he'll be back racing. But if he isn't, Santino Ferrucci's on standby. Penske have loaned his seat from Dry and Ryan Bowl Racing, and I believe Santino was able to get in the simulator on Monday as well, because he was already heading to North Carolina anyway, so he was able to get in the Chevy sim there, I believe. So he'll be as prepared as possible. But as we know with Santino, he doesn't need much preparation. He's usually pretty good at jumping in these things and just nailing it straight away.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I believe he has done that, I think, twice this year, come in basically off the bench as a pinch hitter, as they say in baseball, and has turned in 2 quality races, if memory serves me correctly. And Joseph, hopefully, we wish you a quick recovery, because obviously you are in a dogfight, as Jack pointed out there, for the points, as we dwindle down to just a handful of races left. Speaking of races left this weekend, you, along with me, and I think a whole bunch of other people, are going to be back at IMS. It's been a few months since we were there to cover the Grand Prix that's taking place on Saturday, IndyCar NASCAR event. I thought it'd be all quiet on the Western Front, Jack, but this morning we get up and see there is a court filing, a civil court filing here in Marion County in Indianapolis to do with 2 certain individuals, Chip Ganassi Racing and Alex Palou Racing. Anything, first indication when you caught wind of that, and anything that you can add to it?
Not a whole lot of surprise, to be honest. It felt like from the beginning of this whole thing that there was going to be, some sort of legal proceeding somewhere along the line. So, I guess that bit was kind of expected. I guess because a lot of the court files are protected, we don't know a whole lot about what exactly the court case is, even, which is a really interesting aspect of this. It's a bit annoying from a journalist's point of view, because that's kind of that's the story, right? What is Ganassi suing Alex Palou and his racing entity over? So those court files have been protected, so we don't know about those. We do know about some of the court files that have been released, a couple of Alex Palou's tweets and the McLaren press release announcing that Alex would drive for McLaren next year. So that's part of it. We know Ganassi want this sorted, potentially by the end of August. That's what they've asked for. And we know that Alex gets between 20 and 23 days to reply to this, this whole situation. So we know that's kind of what we know. We don't know a lot. We just know that this is happening. And I think from bringing it back to an IndyCar standpoint, there's not many times in history where an IndyCar driver is driving for a team that is, currently in legal proceedings against them. So not to mention a driver who's trying to win them a championship, a second championship, trying to defend the championship. So absolutely baffling situation to try and get your head around, really, and try to understand. And to be honest, even if we had those court documents, we wouldn't be able to talk about them anyway, and they're kind of behind closed doors at the minute. So we'll watch that one with bated breath. It'll probably be the end of the proceedings where everything comes out, where we'll find out exactly what's happened. But obviously, has massive implications. It's my opinion that I feel like Ganassi are looking elsewhere for next season as much as anything that I've read elsewhere. From sources in the paddock and just my own kind of investigative work in the paddock, it doesn't feel like Ganassi want to move on with Alex Palou next year. But again, that's just from paddock sources, and these things can change so quickly, as we've already seen with this story. 1 minute Alex was signing a contract extension with Ganassi and happy about it, and a couple of hours later he was joining McLaren and rejecting the fact that quote came from him and that that he hadn't extended his contract. So things are going to move extremely quickly in this one. All we can do is kind of watch it unfold and kind of try and work out what's going to happen with the 10 car and also at McLaren, because this has massive implications for whether Alex will drive for McLaren next year, obviously, as well. So, and in turn, Felix Rosenqvist, who's also kind of sat on the sidelines at the moment, wondering where he's going to drive as well. So that's another reason why, I think both teams need to move quickly when it comes to the silly season and getting those, 2 cars filled. So they're both, motivated to get this sorted quickly. So whether they can do that or not as a process of the court proceedings, we'll wait and see.
I just have this funny feeling, Jack, that this isn't going to turn out well for Alex Palou, and I have no inside information at this time, but I just have this feeling that he's going to end up, unfortunately, on the wrong side of the legal end of this, and he's going to have to sit out 2023. I just have this funny feeling that Chip's going to pay him just to sit in 2023. I think it's a huge loss all around, but that's the way I guess contracts are. And I don't know if this was a fraudulent mistake by the Alex Palou camp, not knowing that Chip had this team option in his contract. If that's the case, man, somebody dropped the ball big time on the Alex Palou side of things.
It's difficult with contracts, obviously. We can speculate and think about some of the, what we know from other drivers' contracts at both teams and try to kind of add two and two together. But ultimately, none of us have seen the contracts involved. So all you can do is speculate at this point, what you think is happening. I think everyone, the problem with this, maybe getting your head around this, is the fact that everyone involved here seems, like really competent groups. They're all experienced motorsport people or groups of people who you'd like to think have been through a million contract negotiations before and have dealt with this kind of thing a million times over. We especially know that people like Zach Brown and Chip Ganassi have. So that's where this whole thing is so interesting. It's interesting, I guess, is because, I guess people assume that one side has got this really wrong and that one of them, really hasn't understood what the other one's contract is. But this is where it's so totally difficult when it comes to contracts, because you just don't know what's written into each contract. And, either one of the team bosses might have woken up the morning of presenting a contract to Alex Palou and added something in there or changed something compared to what other drivers have had before. You just don't know. And, even looking back at some of the other, Ganassi contracts, I know, Scott Dixon's come out and said that a lot of them are similar and they kind of have the similar mechanisms in and stuff like that. But even then, like I said, the team bosses or the management groups could have negotiated terms that are different or had something inserted into a contract. So, I guess that's the unusual part of this scenario, is that we kind of trust everyone involved to be really competent and great at their job. So, thinking that one of them might have made a mistake here is almost unimaginable. We'll wait and see how this works out. I did ask Alex point blank whether he would be happy to sit on the sidelines next year, and if that was something that he would be happy with in the context of with a longer term deal being in place and sorted. Would he take the year off, kind of lying down to have the longer term contract that he's looking for? And he said no. He said nobody wants that. Nobody involved in his future wants him to be sat on the sideline in 2023, and he point blank said that wouldn't be happening for him. So all we can do is take everyone at face value at this point, and like I said, wait and see to see what comes out of this. I know that's a fairly boring way to look at it in one sense. It's much more exciting to speculate about all the kind of juicy details of this, but when it comes down to the fundamentals, because it's a contract and it's behind closed doors and no one has seen the contract, even McLaren won't have seen Alex Palou's Ganassi contract, because that's not, that's a private contract held between team and driver that isn't, that other teams aren't allowed to see. So even that won't have happened. So you're down a rabbit hole here of things that could be happening.
Yeah, I think that's that's the only approach that we in the the journalistic side of us can take, obviously, and this is definitely going to be worth watching to see how this plays out. But getting back to the race this weekend, the Gallagher Grand Prix, give us a little bit of preview. What for people that are going out to the race or they're going to watch it on TV or listen to it on the radio, what should they be looking for, Jack?
Well, the absolute great thing about the second Indianapolis road course race of the season is you can pretty much throw everything you've learned from the first race of the season out of the window, because amazingly, even though it's the same track, every time we go here for a second time later in the season, things are totally different. So if you're a fan and you're wondering whether to go and you're thinking we've already had a race at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway earlier this season on the road course, throw that out the window and go, because I guarantee it'll be different. That's one thing that's for sure. Obviously, it's a great weekend in the sense that it's sharing with NASCAR. So if you're a fan of all motorsports and you're a NASCAR fan, you want to see some I guess see the new NASCAR in action and see some proper NASCAR road course racing action, then the Indianapolis Motor Speedway is the place to be this weekend. I think from an IndyCar point of view, it's really all bets off, to be honest. And obviously the last race we had there as well, not just the fact that the second race of the season is always different. The first race this season was wet, so we basically have nothing to go off in the sense of pace. So it's going to be great to see. We know the people like Will Power, Roman Grosjean, Rinus VeeKay always come to the fore for some outside bets for the second two there. Will's obviously fighting for the championship and extremely motivated at the moment. And Marcus Ericsson had an absolutely fantastic race in the wet here earlier in the season, and obviously he's leading the championship. So it's going to be a fantastic weekend, and I don't mean to be a cop out about it, but genuinely the kind of the form book kind of goes out the window for the second race, and things are always different year on year, even not to mention kind of the race earlier in the year as well. So I'm really looking forward to it. I'm really looking forward to seeing how the teams approach this weekend. I'm really looking forward to seeing the Alex Palou Ganassi situation, because that is going to be, it was already, we thought, kind of turned up to 11 when this all happened to start with. And, Alex was put in front of the media in Toronto, but now this has gone up another level, because this is, we've got litigation involved now, and he's driving for them. So that's a whole nother interesting situation. And then we talked about Pato O'Ward earlier. I think he'll desperately be looking for a strong result to kind of, overcome those difficult races he's had in recent weeks and kind of build on that Iowa momentum. So that'll be really interesting to see as well. And of course, Colton Herta, who went through a couple of races, I seem to remember here at the start of his career, where didn't quite have the place figured out or didn't get the results that he really deserved here, and then really started to perform extremely well here, and obviously got the win in the wet back in earlier in the season. So he's another one who's kind of out of championship contention now, I think, but will likely go on a run of races in the second half of the season here, like he did last year. Some really strong tracks for him, so he'll be looking forward to that. And he's also got a gig in Indianapolis on Thursday, playing with his band the Zibs. So and fantastically, their gig poster features Colton Herta's upside down car from his crash at the Indy 500, which is some great kind of self humor there, and a really cool way of interpreting that. And Colton's a great guy for that kind of thing. Maybe having some fun with himself, and to see that gig poster, I thought was really fun. And looking forward to seeing how he gets on this weekend as well.
Yeah, you absolutely hit on all of the storylines that I was looking at. From is Santino Ferrucci going to have to jump in the number 2 car and come off the bench cold again this weekend? And then, if everybody's fantasy would play out, what kind of awkward handshake would it be, or celebration, if Alex Palou was to find himself in victory lane? I think a lot of people are asking themselves that as well. And then not dominance, but Colton Herta winning the race in the spring, in the month of May. And as you said, it was kind of depending on where you were sitting at on the track, because half the track was dry, half the track was wet. So yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Throw everything out the window that you learned back in May, because it looks like the weather on Saturday could be picturesque, about 80 degrees and sunny. So everything you learned in May, like you said, I would definitely throw out the window, and it's going to definitely be a interesting race for sure, with all of the storylines going into it. And I can't imagine what the media bullpen tomorrow. Alex Palou, I hope you're prepared tomorrow, because you are going to get a bulk, if not all, of the media for sure. Jack, for people that we're going to wrap this up here. I don't want to hold you too long. For people that want to follow you, I know you do an amazing podcast as well with JR Hildebrand. For people that don't listen to that, again, shame on them. But where can they find that at, and then where can they follow your work on social media?
Yeah, so I'm on social media at Jack Benyon, Benyon, so you can catch me there. And yeah, our podcast is available on all kind of like major podcasting platforms. And the good news is that sometimes I can just ask a really short question and just let JR Hildebrand off his leash and let him talk, because we all know he loves to talk. And man, has he got some insight when it comes to IndyCar. I mean, he is the absolute perfect person to host the podcast with. And, you know, we have some fun. We take the mick out of each other a little bit. But when it comes to, you know, getting into the storylines of IndyCar, I think JR helps me do a pretty good job of that. And JR himself is just so well connected, not just in IndyCar, but all the way around motorsport. And, you know, for anyone who knows him or follows him, he's got a lot of what I would call fever, which is like a bit of a term. I guess you would describe that as someone who's interested in lots of different types of motorsport, interested in motorsport history, interested in cool cars and just cool things, basically. So JR is definitely one of those guys. And yeah, it's honestly to record a podcast with him every week is awesome, because I still go back to, you know, think about watching him in the Panther racing car when I was a bit younger, and remembering just how well he handled everything that happened in 500 there. And I don't think there's another. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, that's the one. So yeah, I don't think there's another human being on the planet who would have handled that situation as well as JR did. And I'm sure many people agree that his career should have been a lot longer and a lot more fruitful than it actually ended up being. But for my benefit, you know, I get to speak to him every week on our podcast, and I get all of that brilliant insight and stuff like that he should really be like on the TV coverage or something, doing something a lot more massive. But it's great to have him. And yeah, like I said, sometimes I joke with him that I'll just I'll just send him a little picture of my face to stick on his microphone, and he can just talk into that, because you don't need to do much. You just kind of tee him up and let him do his thing, and he's awesome. So yeah, if you can't tell, then I get really excited about hosting a podcast with JR. So yeah, definitely go and check that out. It's available on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, you and him, the podcast that you guys do, that is one of the first listens of the week for me when I need some great insider to maybe find something to write about. Definitely listen to both of you. Give JR my best. Hopefully we'll be able to maybe see him this weekend. I know we'll probably cross paths once or twice on Saturday. Well, I'll make sure that happens. But Jack, again, huge thank you for carving a little bit of time out of your busy schedule to join us. Enjoy the race this weekend. We'll talk down the road, and especially we'll talk this weekend at the media center for sure.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. It's been great, and yeah, big fan. So thanks so much for having me on, and yeah, great. Hopefully get to meet you over the course of the weekend.
Oh, well, I will definitely will make that happen. But Jack, again, go check him out. Social media, go subscribe, like his podcast he does on a weekly basis. If you're looking for great insight that you're not going to find anywhere else, definitely go check out the podcast him and JR Hildebrand do. We'll be right back here on Push to Pass. Yeah, we'll try that again. But as I reiterated in the interview and then meeting Jack today at the media center, huge thank you to Jack for carving out a little bit of time out of his schedule, obviously, to stop by and definitely, like I said, check out the work that he is doing along with JR Hildebrand and others. But yeah, this has ran a little more over than I thought I would. So let's get to the current NTT IndyCar standings, and then we'll get to the preview of the Gallagher Grand Prix, and then we will get on out of here. Looking at the point standings there as they show up on the screen, it is Marcus Ericsson, Will Power, Joseph Newgarden, Scott Dixon, Pato Award, Alex Palou, Scott McLaughlin, Colton Herta, Felix Rosenquist, Alexander Rossi, your top 10. Simon Pagino, Renus VK, Graham Rahal, Ramon Grosjean, Connor Daly, Christian Lundgaard, David Malukas, Elio Castroneves, Takuma Sato, and Jimmy Johnson round out your top 20. Then it's Callum Ilott, Jack Harvey, Delvin DeFrancesca, Kyle Kirkwood, and Dalton Kellett that round out the top 25 currently in the NTT IndyCar points standings. Now, moving on, as we're going to finish this up, wrap this up for this episode of Push to Pass. Let's take a look at the preview, rather, the upcoming race this weekend, Saturday, the Gallagher Grand Prix at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway road course, as we've mentioned throughout the show. The NTT IndyCar Series is back at the world-famous Indianapolis Motor Speedway this weekend for the Gallagher Grand Prix. And as we talked about with Mike and with Jack as well, so many storylines coming in to this event from the Iowa doubleheader last weekend. Joseph Newgarden's status still up in the air for the race. We'll give you an update before we get off here as well. And then also, too, how fractured is the relationship between Chip Ganassi Racing and Alex Palou. Like I said, this race is going to be run on the Indianapolis Motor Speedway road course. That is a 2.439 mile road course, 14 turns, and it goes clockwise. The distance is going to be 85 laps or 207.3 miles. For the push to pass parameters, there's going to be a total of 200 seconds of time with a max time of 20 seconds per activation. As it comes to tire allotment, there's going to be 5 sets of the black primary tires, 4 sets of the alternative red tires, and also note a 6th set of primary tires is going to be available to any car fielding a rookie driver. Back in 2021, Will Power of the number 12 Verizon team, Penske Chevrolet, was the winner. Sitting on pole for the 2021 NTT P1 Award winner was Pato Award in the number 5 Arrow McLaren SP Chevrolet with a time of 1 minute 10 seconds, or 1 minute 10 seconds, 0.71, and 124.167 miles per hour. The record qualifying lap comes from Will Power of 1 minute and 7 seconds, and he ran that at 129.687 miles an hour, and that was in May 12th to be exact, of 2017. Taking a look at the track schedule for Friday and Saturday. First for Friday, between 9:30 and 11 a.m. is when the NTT IndyCar Series is going to have their first practice session. And then starting at 1 p.m. is going to be qualifying for the NTT P1 Award. And that's going to consist of 3 rounds of knockout qualifying. Then we go to Saturday, 8:15 to 8:45 in the morning is going to be the warm-up for the NTT IndyCar Series. At 12:23 p.m., drivers are going to get the famous words to start your engines, and the green flag is going to drop from the Indianapolis Motor Speedway road course for the Gallagher Grand Prix at 12:30. Taking a look at some active winners of this race, Will Power has won it 5 times. Simon Pagenaud has won it 3 times. Scott Dixon, Joseph Newgarden, and Rinus VeeKay both have won it 1 time. Taking a look at active pole winners, Will Power has captured 5 poles. Pato Award, Roman Grosjean, Rinus VeeKay, Felix Rosenqvist, and Simon Pagenaud have each won 1 pole apiece. And taking a look at predictions and for fantasy purposes, as we did with Mike earlier, my locks for this week, there's only 3. Colton Herta, Scott McLaughlin, Will Power. My sleepers this week, the Arrow McLaren SP team, both of Pato Award, who's behind me, and Felix Rosenqvist. Simon Pagenaud, Connor Daly, Rinus VeeKay, Marcus Ericsson, Alex Rossi, both cars from the Dale Coyne Racing Team, and cars from the Ray Hall Letterman Lanigan Racing Stable as well. And then my fades for this week, who I'm going to stay away from, Joseph Newgarden, because obviously his status is up in the air right now, Alex Palou, Scott Dixon, Jimmy Johnson, Elio Castroneves, any car from the AJ Foyt Racing Team, and rookie Delvin D. Francesca. So that is your look at fantasy purposes here on the Push to Pass podcast. And now wrapping things up, like I said earlier, give you a update on Joseph Newgarden. This was tweeted out from the NTT IndyCar Series official Twitter page at about 6 p.m. this evening. Following the event at the Iowa Speedway, and per IndyCar protocol, the driver of the number 2 PPG Team Penske Chevrolet, Joseph Newgarden, was evaluated this afternoon by IndyCar medical director Dr. Gregory Bellows. The examination determined that Newgarden is cleared to participate in tomorrow's NTT IndyCar Series practice session on the Indianapolis Motor Speedway road course. Newgarden will be reevaluated after the session to determine if he's cleared to resume all racing activities for the remainder of the Gallagher Grand Prix event. So that is where we stand right now with the status of Joseph Newgarden. If anything does change, make sure you follow all of the social media outlets where you can find the Push to Pass podcast, as you see them scrolling below your screen right now. So again, huge thank you. I know this has ran a little longer than I expected, but huge thank you first to Jack Benyon of the race for joining us. Check him out. He does amazing work. Check out the podcast he does as well. And then, as always, a huge thank you to Mike from BetIndyCar. Make sure you're following him on social media for all of the updates to betting lines and things of that nature. So that does it for this episode of the Push to Pass podcast. Thanks to everyone that tuned in to listen/watch, and to people that will tune in at a later date as well. So for Derik Vance, if you are out at the IMS road course this weekend and you do happen to see me, make sure you tell me hi, that you listen and how much you enjoy the Push to Pass podcast, because as a reminder, this is all for you, the racing fan. So for Derik Vance and everyone else here at the Push to Pass podcast, we will see you next week with a preview of the Nashville Street Course race. See you then.